This week, Uncensored. The headlines they hope you scroll past.
Tonight, America is doing two of its favorite things: making a family's unspeakable grief into content and discovering, again, that a judge should not become a post-game analyst while he still has to referee the replay. First, Nolan Wells. Today, Nolan would have turned 19 years old. Instead of cake, candles, and somebody embarrassedly singing too loud in the living room, his family has a prayer rally in Biloxi and a national virtual vigil asking a question that ought to be the smallest thing a family can ask of a functioning society. What happened to our son? Now, Nolan disappeared after a July 4th boating trip to Horn Island, Mississippi. His body was recovered 2 days later. More than 6 weeks later, the public still does not have a settled explanation. Now, the family commissioned autopsy was inconclusive. The state findings are not public while the case moves through grand jury review. So let us start with the sentence the internet finds physically painful to say. We do not know what happened. We do not know means we do not get to manufacture a murder weapon out of a repost. We do not get to appoint ourselves deputy coroner because we paused a grainy video 3 times and added some spooky music. We do not get to turn a dead teenager into the protagonist of our favorite political screenplay because grief makes people vulnerable and algorithms make assholes profitable. But we do not know does not mean shut up and move on. It does not mean the family should accept silence as a conclusion. It does not mean public institutions get to hide behind the word ongoing until the story loses its commercial value and everybody who cared has been emotionally exhausted into submission. That is why Nolan Wells is breaking through. Not because America suddenly discovered empathy. Please, fuck no. We have a federal holiday for pretending we do. But because this story sits on every raw nerve we have left. A young black man, Mississippi, a family with unanswered questions. A photograph people have turned into a national Rorschach test. Rorschach, don't know how to pronounce it. You know what the fuck I mean. A terrible absence where an explanation should be. And the impact is ugly. Very ugly. There are vigils. There are calls for federal scrutiny. There is real solidarity. And because we live in a culture where the comment section has the moral hygiene of a bus station bathroom, there are threats, harassment, attacks on people connected to the case, and strangers treating uncertainty like an invitation to cosplay as investigators. A family has lost a child. That alone should be enough to keep our mouths from sprinting ahead of the facts. Demand answers. Demand transparency. Demand a competent, independent investigation. But do not demand certainty you do not possess. The truth is not helped by a mob of amateur Sherlock Holmeses screaming into ring lights. That is not justice. That is grief with a Wi-Fi connection. Now to Texas, where Karmelo Anthony's case gave us a different lesson in public trust. If you are the judge who may have to decide whether a trial was fair, you best believe do not go on television and start grading the verdict like you are calling a damn college football game. Now, Karmelo Anthony was convicted of murder and sentenced to 35 years in prison for the fatal stabbing of Austin Metcalf at a 2025 high school track meet. That conviction is still in place. Let me say that again for the people listening from inside a conspiracy theory vending machine. The recusal of the judge did not erase the verdict. It did not declare Anthony innocent. It did not prove the jury was corrupt. It did not grant a new trial. What happened is that a visiting judge, Sid Harrell, removed Judge John Roach from the post-trial proceedings. The ruling said Roach's impartiality might reasonably be questioned. Why? Because the defense challenged Roach's restrictions on public access to the trial and then pointed to his own public comments after the verdict. Roach defended the courtroom restrictions, publicly endorsed the jury's conclusion, and wrote that the process was conducted fairly. Then he was still positioned to preside over a motion arguing that the process may not have been fair. That is the legal version of asking the restaurant manager to investigate whether the restaurant poisoned you after he has already posted a 5-star Yelp review of his own kitchen. Now, could Judge Roach sincerely believe he was being transparent? Absolutely. Could he sincerely believe the jury got it right? Sure. Judges are human beings. They have opinions, faces, thoughts, families, assholes, bad hair days, and presumably a group text where somebody sends them cursed memes. But the job requires something harder than private sincerity. It requires public confidence that the judge can hear a challenge with an open mind. A judge is not supposed to sound like the prosecutor's victory lap narrator while the defense is still trying to establish that the starting line was crooked. And this is the crucial distinction. A post-verdict recusal is not routine housekeeping. No, it's not. Courts do not normally hand down a verdict, wait for the confetti to settle, and then replace the judge because somebody got too chatty. That doesn't happen like that. Now, under the Texas recusal standard, the question is whether impartiality might reasonably be questioned. That is not a finding that Roach is a villain, a criminal, or some courthouse supervillain twirling a robe instead of a mustache. No, that's not what it means. It is a finding that the appearance of neutrality was sufficiently compromised that somebody else must handle what remains. That looks bad for the judge because it is bad for the judge. Not necessarily evil, not necessarily sinister, but still bad. A judge's credibility is their oxygen. This is bad optics. Once the public can reasonably ask whether the judge pre-answered the fairness question in public, the court has a problem larger than one man's interview strategy. Now, the new judge now faces Anthony's motion for a new trial. The merits remain to be decided. The public should be capable of holding two thoughts in its head at once. Though I know that is increasingly asking a lot of a country that keeps trying to drink glue on fucking TikTok. First, a murder conviction deserves the full weight of the law and careful review of the evidence. Second, every defendant, especially in a case that has become a national cultural cage match, deserves a judge who has not publicly applauded the answer before ruling on whether the test was even fair. And there is a thread connecting Nolan Wells and Karmelo Anthony, even though the cases are profoundly different. In both, the public is staring at institutions and asking whether they can be trusted to do the slow, boring, sacred work of getting it right. Or do we just want to wrap it up, tie a nice bow, and call it a fucking day? Nolan's family needs facts, not viral folklore. Anthony's case needs due process, not judicial commentary dressed up as transparency. And the rest of us need to remember that justice is not whatever gives our side the best clips. It is not a hashtag. It is not a chant. It is not the moment the algorithm decides your grief has enough engagement to monetize. It is the stubborn, humiliatingly unglamorous commitment to evidence, fairness, and answers. Anything less is bullshit with better lighting. I'm your host, Stevie B. Good night.